posted. Here's Sam.
Thank you, Kosh. Labor is within striking distance of winning a federal election. According to the latest news poll out this morning, the government now trails the opposition by just 4%, two-party preferred, and Julia Gillard is back in front of Tony Abbott as preferred Prime Minister, 42% to 38%. Let's run all of this past our special panel. Former Liberal leader John Hewson and Labor strategist Bruce Hawker. Good morning to you both, gents. Bruce, firstly to you, not only is Julia Gillard now leading Tony Abbott post her week in Western Sydney, Labor's primary vote has risen to 34%. Is that enough to save her as leader until the election?
Well, it's encouraging for her. It's a 3% jump. It shows the value of concentrating a campaign in a particular area. Of course, they were governing very furiously for a week in Western Sydney, but essentially that's what they were doing, and it shows that you can get a lift. It's still well short, though, of where they need to be. They were on 38% in the last election, and they're still well short of that, so they've got a long way to go. The
media bagged that week in Western Sydney and said it wasn't a success. Would Labor be saying it was?
Well, I think on those numbers you'd say they were. News poll says that the spike was really in Sydney, that Labor's leap was in Sydney rather than the rest of the country. OK, John Hewson, would you have expected that week in Western Sydney to turn things around like this?
Well, I think what moves the polls is colour and movement, and Julia was on TV in saturation terms for the entire week, and whatever you think of what she was doing and the strategy behind it, the fact is that colour and movement influences the polls. So the question for her is will this be sustained going forward? You know, open question, because the polls are bouncing around.
Do you think Tony Abbott wants to go to the election against Julia Gillard? He doesn't want Rudd to come back?
Look, it'd be much tougher for Rudd. I mean, these polls, the devastating part of these polls for the ALP is that it's quite clear that if Rudd was the leader, he'd win hands down. And I'm sure that Tony's conscious of that. And in those terms, yeah, I think he'd prefer Gillard to stay there, and because she's an embattled Prime Minister, who I think in many parts of the electorate she's toxic. And while some of the issues cut pretty well perhaps in Western Sydney, 457 visas, for example, I think they were the icing on the cake from Colin Barnett's point of view in Western Australia to give him a bigger win than he expected.
Yeah. So. And this leadership speculation just isn't going away, is it?
No, it's not. And look, you've got to look at the size of the support for Kevin Rudd there, 56%. That's 2.5% more than he received in the winning election in 2007. It's bigger than John Howard's win in '96 or Bob Hawke's in 1983. He is hugely popular with the Australian electorate.
Just quickly, Bruce, there's rumours on Twitter this morning Bill Shorten is going to resign today. Are you hearing those? And what's your take on that?
No, I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be very surprised. I mean, Bill Shorten is in there for the long term, the long haul. He's a professional politician. I think that would be a very destabilising act on his part, and there's no sign that he's ever going to do anything like that.
Yeah, I can see the look on your face that you mean that. You were genuinely surprised to hear that. Bruce, John, great to chat. Thank you for your time.